Hello. Just to review what we have covered to this point so far. So far, the task has been created, the spheral maze task, with learning goals and success criteria developed. The assessment has been created within Gradebook, and some documentation has been done, including observations and conversations that can help determine student understanding and achievement of the learning goals and success criteria. So at this point, we are ready to move on to using the Gradebook to provide feedback and next steps. So on the screen right now in this video, I've added a little bit more since the last time I showed you a video on the Gradebook. I included a column and a unit for measurement because this task, if you remember back to when it was created, is a combined geometry and measurement task. It has two learning goals related to geometry and one related to measurement. So both of those are now reflected in the Gradebook. So I have created assessments for both geometry and measurement. Both are reflected, and I have gone through my student list and I have assigned a yes/no value for each of the columns. Once again, yes meaning the student has successfully met the success criteria, or no, they are not there yet. By putting those in the column, you'll notice that the no is circled. That just draws attention to that. Anything where it has anything which is measured as a risk indicator not meeting the criteria is outlined within Gradebook. You'll notice that there are a couple of symbols for Thomas Webb right here, and once again a reminder that all of these names are fictional names. Thomas Webb, this indicator here means that the student was absent that particular day. If I click on that drop-down arrow for status indicators, you can briefly see a list of the other possible status indicators. So Thomas has been absent, all other students were present for the activity, and the assessment values are posted within Gradebook. These columns have not been shared. You can see that the blue share button down there is still activated. If I was to click share, then any information that is in that column would immediately become visible to the student and the parent. For purposes of this particular task, I am not sharing it, and I'll go into some detail and explain why. Keeping in mind that this is an assessment as learning, I'm using this as formative assessment to provide feedback to the student on next steps, and I'm using this to move learning forward. If I open up one of the tasks, I click up here, and I open it up, that will take me into a details view of the Gradebook, and you can see that in addition to the yes, no, and the status column, I also have a comment column, and I have I have a discussion column as well. Two possible options to provide feedback, and this is going to be on individual preference of the teacher, how they want to use the Gradebook in general, and specifically for each individual assessment task. For me, modeling this activity, I'm choosing to not share it with students and parents, but I do want to be able to provide feedback. So here's what I mean by that. The yes/no indicators, I'm using that for my own information. I want to know who understands the criteria, who's achieved it, and what my next steps are. I am using the comment column to just leave a quick comment for those students who did not meet the criteria, a quick comment about what it is that caused some difficulty for them. So for example, Charlie Booth, difficulty describing properties of quadrilaterals. I don't need to go into too much more detail than that. I'm just using this to inform my next steps, to maybe find out who I need to focus on for small group instruction, or in this case I have, looks like several students who are struggling to describe properties of quadrilaterals, or they have difficulty measuring angles. By analyzing that data, it might be beneficial for me to do a whole group lesson and kind of review some of the concepts that I have already gone over, seeing as how almost 50% of the class did not meet the criteria. Having said that, because I am not sharing these comments, how can I use this and leverage it to provide feedback to the student? And that's where the discussion column comes in. Discussions are conversations between students and teachers that can be initiated either way. So a teacher can initiate a discussion with a student, or if a student needs clarification on a task, the student can leave a private message to the teacher and seek clarification, and that will show up as a discussion. So that is what I have chosen to do to provide feedback in this case. I'm keeping the comments and the status, the yes/no indicator. I'm keeping that for my own purposes, my own benefit, but I want to open up the discussion here for student use for feedback. So in order for me to find out who I have left feedback for, you'll see that there is a blue speech bubble that becomes highlighted. That is showing me that at this point I have left feedback for Roy and John. A good way for me to track who's received feedback and who hasn't. So if I click on the discussion tab, it opens up the feedback that I have left for Roy. Roy, we will be reviewing this tomorrow. We have an anchor chart posted at the front of the class to help you when we are discussing this. So that's how I am using that for feedback. Even though this assessment has not been shared, the discussion tab, anything that is ever written in the discussion tab is automatically visible to the student and the parent. So anything I'm typing in there, I have to keep in mind that that is going to be visible. And again, that's the intentionality that I am using for this gradebook task. I want the feedback to be visible to the student, and I want to keep the parent informed as well. So I'm using the discussion tab. If I wanted to use the comment tab for feedback, then I wouldn't be writing in what I have here. I wouldn't be putting down difficulty describing properties of quadrilaterals. I might have something maybe a little bit more personalized for Roy, but then I would have to share this task within the gradebook. So that's the difference between discussion and comments. If I go back to my regular gradebook view, another thing I just wanted to point out quickly, there are tiny blue arrows in the upper right hand corner. Those are indications that I have typed something into the comment cell. So again, there's a blue arrow beside Charlie's name. If I open it up, it's just telling me that I have typed a comment under Charlie's name. Final point about using Gradebook to provide feedback and next steps. Under my units for geometry and measurement, and over here there's a column for overall averages. There is nothing in those columns right now. They are all blank. That is because in my class setup I have intentionally turned averages off. And that is going to be something that at this point is going to be an individual choice for teachers within their classrooms. But for me, I am choosing to take a look at the data in my gradebook, which again will be an accumulation of all assessment data, assessment for, as, and of learning. I want to spend a particular amount of time focusing on most recent and most consistent, and therefore for me personally, I am choosing to turn the averages off. It just works better for me analyzing my own gradebook. So just that's something that we get a lot of questions about right there. Okay, thank you for watching.